to set your diameters and to put the details in the places where you want them. If you compare it to the storyboard, you can hopefully see where we're heading on this. In part 4, I'm going to show you how to turn the two beads. We've got this large central bead, which when you look at the detail, it's quite a tall, slightly pointy bead. And then I'm going to do the bead at the base of the finial, which again, when you look at it, it's slightly wonky. The centre is slightly low. And that is purely because of how the finial sits on top of the clock. When you're making kind of restoration work like this, it's really important to notice details like that and notice the shapes of the beads. There's no such thing as a standard bead. They vary tremendously between different items. So we're going to turn these two beads in this part of the video. Now, having just done the blocking out stage, I will have my bead and parting tool in my hand. So I'm going to turn this small lower bead with the beading and parting tool. The tall, narrow, pointy bead in the centre here, you certainly can turn with a skew chisel or a beading and parting tool, but I think it would be easier with a gouge. So I would generally pick up the spindle gouge for this and then go on to do the codes. I try to keep switching tools to a minimum, so it makes sense. I've got this in my hand, I'm going to use it for this bead, and then we're going to switch and make it just one switch. So, first thing to do is power up the lathe, and I want to mark the centre of each bead. So my tall bead, the centre is about here. The lower bead, because it's slightly wonky, the centre is slightly low. It's actually about here, somewhere like that. You could mark that on your template if you wanted. The centre sort of here, really, if that makes sense. So, beading and parting tool, I'm going to use the tip of the tool, and we're looking to curve this bead right down into the corner here. My first cut is to remove the corner in a slicing cut like that, and then going to pick up the cut, and you see that groove and that feathered edge? That means I've got control of the cut. And you'll see that all the way around. Now there, I haven't quite made it to the bottom of the bead. And what you'll find, and this is important when you're turning beads, if we can do a little bit of a close-up here, sorry. Can you see that area of slightly torn grain at the bottom there? You might look at that and think, it's alright, I'll sand it later. Well, I can tell you now, you won't. Marks like that, this is kind of end grain damage. You will never sand that out. That needs turning. So whether you're turning this with a gouge or a skew or a beading and parting tool, you need to turn it. And make sure you turn it right down to the bottom there. Base as well. A little bit smaller. I'm going to just trim the base of the finial as well, so it's clean and slightly hollowed. I think that'll be fine. Then I'm going to switch to my spindle gouge, and I'm going to do the same for the tall bead here. Now, with a tall bead, it's really important to understand your bevel contact. That bevel needs to point in the direction of travel. You see that? So I've got to really swing my handle and get my tool really pointing in the right direction when I get to the bottom, because just like the little bead, I need to cut right into that corner. So I'm going to roll the bead round. And with tall ones like this, it can be useful to turn both sides together so that you keep the shape balanced. It's very easy to make a bead that's a bit wonky, kind of leaning over to one side. That's not bad. This side's better. This side's a little bit more rounded, so we're just going to have to work on that. Take your time. If it takes 5 or 6 cuts each side, then that's what it takes. In production, the first one always takes the longest, but after that you kind of get used to making the shapes and you find you can make them in less and less cuts. That's nice and even curves, and the cuts go right down to the base of the bead on each side. I'll bring you around here just to look closely. Nice and even, right down to the bottom on each side. Curved, clean base. That is the beads turned. In the next part, we're going to look at turning the two cove shapes. Just wanted to talk a little bit about finishing. This bowl is one that I made for a magazine article recently, and it's finished with the Tretex hard wax oil, satin finish, and you can see that this side of the bowl is just the oil, 3 coats of oil, and you can see it's a lovely satin finish. What you've just seen is me buffing it with this brush, and what we're getting is a much more lustrous finish with that brushed finish. See the difference there? Particularly you can see it on the ebonized rim. And I started experimenting a while ago after I did a restoration job on a chair where I needed just to revive the finish, and I applied some brown wax and I buffed it with this brush, which is a Chestnut Products buffing brush. You can see I used a brown wax, and I was really impressed with how it came up, and it got me thinking about perhaps using a brush in conjunction with the hard wax oil, because this obviously is a blend of oils and waxes and it has a natural wax content. I've had this brush for a little while. Again, it's made by Chestnut Products, and here I've got it mounted on their mandrel that comes with their buffing system, which just gives me a bit of working room between the chuck really. It also comes with this little fitment on the back there, which allows you can hold that directly in a chuck, or you can hold it on a drill as well, so you can actually use it almost by hand on a drill. And on the face of it, this seems like quite a coarse brush. There's nothing, no added compound to that, it's just a brush. And you can see that I didn't spend sort of a minute worth of buffing there, and I think there is, it's only subtle, but there is a difference. And I think it still would be considered a satin finish, but I think it just gives more luster and a more kind of depth to the finish, and I've been really impressed with it. So this brush, like I say, is by Chestnut Products, and I've been playing around with it a bit recently, and I've been really impressed with the combination of the hard wax oil and the brush. I'm going to finish buffing this with it, and then I will post some pictures, and I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm making a set of these funny little boxes today, and I just wanted to share with you the technique that I use for making sure that this face in here, where the two parts of the box meet, is dead square. It's very important that you get that dead square on there. If you've made it and it's slightly kind of dovetailed in one way or another, it makes it virtually impossible to make that lid fit properly. So what I do, I use a little steel ruler and I just press it against the side in here. And what happens is, if you look down and compare that to your bed bars, you can see if you've got it dead right or not. You can see I need to just adjust this one very slightly so that it lines up. And I find that because of the size of the ruler compared to the size of this face, it really shows it up, and it's really a very accurate way of measuring if that is square or not. When I make little boxes, the fit of the lid that I aim for generally is to have a lid that won't fall off, but that is fairly easy to remove with your fingertips. So without applying undue force, it should just come away, but is relatively secure in itself. The technique I use to achieve a good fit on the lid is all about how you cut this tenon. It can be a real challenge to cut that just right. And I found if you try and cut that dead parallel, it really is a challenge. But what I do, rather than cutting it parallel, if I hold this, you can probably just about see, there's a very slight crest on there. It's not dead straight, very slightly kind of barreled, if you like. And what that does, as I fit the lid, it allows only quite a small area of surface contact. You can see there's a little bit of colour there where the lid has jammed on. And because you've only got that small area of contact on this slight crest, it actually allows a little bit of crush, if you like. It just squashes the fibres of the grain a little bit, and it gives you that tight jam fit that you need to shape the lid. Once you've finished that, I take the lid off, and it's very easy just to flatten that out and make it straight again, essentially, and just adjust it until the fit of the lid is just perfect. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that helps.